Hello and welcome to the first in our series on AndEngine game programming. This tutorial starts off with how to set up an Android game project. And it assumes three things. It assumes that you have Eclipse installed, it assumes you have the Android SDK installed, and it assumes that you have the AndEngine repository installed into Eclipse. To install the Android SDK as well as Eclipse, the best thing you can do is go to the Android developer website, find the Getting Started page, and install both Eclipse and the SDK for your system. And it covers Windows, Mac, and Linux with detailed instructions as well as common issues that you run into. So that's really the best way to get started there. To install AndEngine, there's some great YouTube tutorials, and one that I really find very helpful is linked to on the web page. So just go to AndEngine references. That'll bring up the Introduction to AndEngine article with this first video that just gives a brief overview of how OpenGL works, and specifically how it works in AndEngine. But halfway down that page you're going to see a link, and it takes you to a channel called My Bringback, and he has two videos on there that cover setup of AndEngine for OpenGL or GLES, that is 2.0. So follow that, you'll be up and running, and you'll be ready to start with what we're going to do. So to set up your game, you go to File, New, and choose Android Application Project. If you don't see it in the drop-down, just go down here to Other, click that, and it'll give you a full list you can scroll through to find Android Application Project. So we click that, and it brings up our new Android application dialog. And the first thing it wants us to do is give our application a name. I'm going to call this Tutorial Game, just to keep it simple. And you'll note it fills in these other parameters for us. Keep in mind that the application name is supposed to be human readable. So it's whatever you want your game title to look like. So if your game title was, for instance, Grand Theft Auto, you would type in Grand space Theft space Auto. Project name will jam all those words together, and you can change this if you want, but I just leave it alone. Under package name, Google actually recommends that you don't leave this as com.something. And the reason is that you want this to be unique. Your package name will identify your app on Google Play and in the marketplace. So you want it to be unique and easy for Google to deal with. It'd be rare for you to name it exactly like someone else's package, but if it does happen, you have to come back and change all of this. So I usually name it game.fun. Whatever the game name is. You should pick your own. So maybe you want to name it game.hard, game.casual, whatever works for you. The last thing we're going to change on this page is the minimum required SDK, and I always set that to 2.1. You may have different reasons for setting yours higher or lower. Perhaps you need features that are only available on higher, more recent releases. Or maybe you want to cover all the way back to Android 1.5. I don't actually recommend going lower than Android 2.1 for the simple reason that AndEngine prior to that ran on previous versions of GLES, so 1 and 1.1 I think they were. They were slower, less efficient, didn't make quite as nice a games. AndEngine will run on those older versions of OpenGL ES, but you're likely to run into problems, then you're going to get complaints, and your rating's going to tank. Avoid it, stick with Android 2.1, and you should be fine. Before leaving this page, come down here to Theme and change it to None. Every once in a while there's a conflict with these holo themes, and I can't even remember what the conflict is. but we don't need them, so we might as well avoid the problem altogether. And once you're done with that, click Next. Leave everything on this page alone. Granted, you may not have a custom launcher icon ready for your game, but if you do, you can follow along, and if not, you can always come back and change it and set it up afterward. This is the Configure Launch Icon page. You can use an image, you can use clip art, you can use text. I'm just going to call this Tutorial Game. I'm going to leave the font as it is. I'm going to put it in a circle. And I'm going to leave the color alone because I kind of like it. And you can adjust the padding as you see fit. But I'm actually just going to leave it at 0% here. If you wanted to use an image, which most people do, you would go find it, and I've actually made one here, and it would look like that. And again, you can make all these options. When you're done, just click Next, and it's going to ask you to create an activity. Leave this all alone, blank activity, click Next. One last screen, it's going to ask you what do you want to name it. You can name it whatever you want, but I actually like the term main activity because this will be our main activity. It will be the part of our program that gets AndEngine loaded and gets our game up and running. When you're all done with that, click Finish, and this will create your game or your application project, and it'll pop up this activity main.xml, which you can go ahead and close. Now there's two things we're going to do before our project setup is finished. First, under Assets, right-click, go to New, and choose Folder. Type in GFX, and click Finish. This will be our graphics folder. Always has to be under Assets because AndEngine references everything against the Assets folder. Now you can actually change that, but there's no reason to, and we're going to just follow the standard. So this GFX folder will contain all of our graphics. Later on we'll add sound and music and things like that, and they'll get their own folders. But to get the game up and running, we need graphics. The other thing you need to do is go up to your package name, right-click that, and go all the way down to Properties. And when this dialog box comes up, make sure Android is highlighted. And under here, it's going to ask you, it's going to say Library, and AndEngine won't already be added. So what you'll need to do is click Add and choose AndEngine. Then click Apply and OK. And now AndEngine is incorporated into your game, which means you can use anything under this folder here labeled AndEngine. The next video is going to cover the main activity, and the video after that is going to cover the scene manager. And these are just going to be very basic videos explaining what these classes do and how they're incorporated into our game. So please follow up and look for those.